Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast. Good morning. It's Tuesday, the 24th of February. I'm Caroline Hepker in London.
And I'm Stephen Carroll in Brussels. Coming up today, Trump's new 10% global trade tariff comes into force with a hike to 15% still in the works.
Artificial intelligence, real fear. The AI scare trade erupts again following a report warning of mass white-collar layoffs.
Plus, putting each other in the shade, Meta and EssilorLuxottica spar over the pricing of smart glasses.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Donald Trump's new 10% global tariffs are now in effect. The US president signed an executive order last Friday authorising the 10% levy after the Supreme Court struck down his original sweeping duties. Trump subsequently threatened to raise the rate to 15%, but he's not yet officially issued a directive to increase it. Eugene Soroka, executive director of the Port of Los Angeles, says firms have spent recent days scrambling to understand how the levies will affect them.
Many companies were working on their ledgers and trying to calculate what their new effective tariff rates would be. Now, these tariffs under Section 122 of the Trade Act are a lot more prescriptive, have many more exclusions, and are temporary, which means there will be more debate, more capitulation going down the line, and more uncertainty.
Eugene Soroka was speaking as the White House says it's working on a formal order to lift the global rate to 15%, although no timeline for that move has been finalised.
Well, an assessment by the European Union has found that President Trump's planned 15% increase means that levies on some goods would be above the 15% ceiling agreed in the EU-US trade deal. On Monday, the European Parliament suspended legislative work on approving that agreement, requesting clarity on Trump's new trade policy. Josh Wingrove is Bloomberg's White House reporter.
Even by the standards of this administration, which is not exactly like priding itself on meticulous long-term planning and sticking to it, this has been chaotic. And so some of the fallout we're seeing is from the lack of specificity, the story from the Europeans complaining that some of their tariffs have effectively risen. That's because they've sort of papered over quickly these tariffs without exclusions that sort of, nip and tuck around some of the deals that were painstakingly negotiated, in particular how they stack on top of each other.
Josh Wingrove speaking there after President Trump said on social media on Monday that he'll put much higher tariffs on countries that, quote, play games with the Supreme Court ruling.
Stocks fell in another AI scare trade after a research report outlined the sweeping potential impact of artificial intelligence on jobs, sectors and economies like the US. Little-known research company Citrini imagined a world where consumers used AI agents to avoid credit card fees and delivery apps. In response, stocks including American Express, Blackstone and DoorDash fell by at least 6%, something which surprised the report's co-author Alap Shah.
I thought there was going to be a small reaction. It was definitely larger than we expected. But I think it's not that surprising when you take a step back and consider kind of where the markets are in the U.S. The AI trade has been going on for 3.5 years. It's been more or less a straight line up. And essentially, like, everyone is max long today. And so there really aren't many incremental buyers left. And so it, on the one hand, spooks people when you do consider what is negative about this. But I think specifically the market right now is trying to digest this idea that AI has gotten a lot more powerful in the last 6 months.
Speaking to Bloomberg, Shah added that he thinks governments should start taxing AI to prepare for the effects of coming mass unemployment. He expects AI could cut white-collar employment by 5% over the next 18 months.
Jamie Dimon says that he sees parallels to the 2008 global financial crisis when a rush to make loans ended disastrously. Speaking to investors yesterday, the JPMorgan CEO suggested that some lenders are making riskier decisions in a bid to boost net interest income. According to Dimon, some of those decisions are related to artificial intelligence.
Even if a credit cycle is normal, so when you have a recession, you have a rise in credit losses, the surprise has often been which industry. You didn't expect newspapers in 2000, Warren Buffett businesses. You didn't expect utilities and phone companies in 08 and 09. And this time around, it might be software because of AI.
JPMorgan CEO Jamie Dimon there speaking at an investor event on Monday. The news comes as the financial industry, like many others, has suffered declines in recent weeks due to AI concerns. Dimon added that he expects the credit cycle will eventually sour again, though he's not sure when.
Standard Chartered has announced a fresh share buyback worth $1.5 billion. That's as the bank reported weaker than expected fourth quarter earnings with adjusted pre-tax profits of $1.24 billion. Profits were hit by a $233 million charge from the bank's Fit for Growth efficiency programme. Standard Chartered says it expects income growth this year to be around the bottom end of its 5 to 7% range.
UK police have arrested former British ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, on suspicion of misconduct in public office. This comes after the US Department of Justice released emails allegedly showing him forwarding government information to Jeffrey Epstein. Mandelson was released on bail early this morning, but is still under investigation. He has not been charged, and his lawyer has declined to comment. Bloomberg's James Walcock has more.
Peter Mandelson's arrest deepens the crisis engulfing Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The UK leader picked the Labour grandee to be his US ambassador despite Mandelson's known links to Jeffrey Epstein. In the wake of the fresh revelations stemming from emails released by the Department of Justice, Starmer's Chief of Staff, Communications Chief and Cabinet Secretary all quit their posts. And Conservative leader Kerry Badenoch has further criticised the Prime Minister's choice, saying Mandelson's arrest was, quote, the defining moment of Sir Keir's premiership. In London, James Woolcock, Bloomberg Radio.
It's been 4 years since Russia began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and US President Donald Trump's efforts to end the war are stalling. Peace talks have already blown through several deadlines, and even some American officials admit privately that they see no signs Putin is willing to budge. Vitaly Klitschko is the mayor of Kyiv.
This war can stop easily. One person who beginning the war, I'm talking about President of Russia, Putin.
Klitschko added that any peace deal cannot be a capitulation from Ukraine. One concern among Kyiv's allies is that Putin may agree to a ceasefire that would allow Trump to claim success while Russia continues a campaign of sabotage, hybrid warfare or election interference.
Progress towards gender equality at the top of British businesses is achingly slow. That's according to the CEO of the FTSE Women Leaders Review, which has released its latest report. Bloomberg's Tiwa Adebayo has more.
The average number of female FTSE 100 CEOs didn't move at all last year. Findings from a government-backed review reveal the number of women at the helm of UK companies peaked in 2023, when 10 out of the 100 bosses were women. That's as the FTSE 350, which includes mid-sized businesses, missed a voluntary target of 40% of women in top executive roles by 2025. However, board representation amongst the group exceeded the same goal, hitting 43%. Findings also showed that female representation was notably stronger amongst non-executive directors. In London, Tiwa Adebayo, Bloomberg Radio.
And those are our top stories for you this morning. Investors seem pretty jumpy today and yesterday about the impact of AI and the trade tariff uncertainty. IBM shares plunged 13% on a new Anthropic tool, the worst day in more than 25 years for IBM. But US and European stock futures this morning are actually up at least 0.2%. Some Asian equities also shrugging off the US sell-off. Just look at the Kospi up by 2% and Taiwan's TAIEX also up by 2.7% this morning. The yen is down, more tensions between China and Japan. European car sales also for January dropping 3.5%. So those are the markets and what could move them.
In a moment, we'll bring you the latest on Donald Trump's new global tariffs, plus why Meta and its smart glasses partner EssilorLuxottica might not be seeing eye to eye. But another story that's caught our eye this morning on why maybe you should be thinking about a trip to Greenland this summer. Now, the geopolitical headlines, of course, has had us all talking about Greenland for months, but Jackie Cardanio has been writing about how really the island is gearing up for another bumper tourist season in their own way. They did have a big jump in tourists last year. The first direct flights from the US started from Newark Airport, and there are new flights from Copenhagen as well. There are new airports opening this year as well. The experience, though, is what Jackie Jackie has really been writing about that caught my eye. There may be similarities, she says, with Iceland, but it's a completely different scenario. 80% of Greenland is essentially a sheet of ice. Getting around involves usually a boat or a helicopter. Nothing is impervious, she underlines on several occasions, to the whims of weather. And you might be going there looking for a luxury experience, but some of the people she spoke to, one of them, I thought, rather diplomatically said, we've had some private jet clients that didn't really fit in.
Okay.
Which I think is the suggestion that while there's lots of great fresh food, fresh fish to be had, there was apparently somebody decided they wanted a birthday cake. It had to be brought by boat for 2 hours and barely survived. So, if you're doing travel around Greenland, you must be prepared. It's a lot of glamping and the prices are steep to go with it, I can tell you. But it does sound like an incredible experience if you're prepared. And I think resilient might be an operative word if you're planning a trip.
Yeah, listen, the season is also about 3, barely 4 months even to visit, to be honest, and there aren't very many roads, so you really do have to be prepared. I mean, it does sound amazing, but yes, I love the fact that in the piece they say there is no Amazon Prime here. So yes, it's, you have to be prepared. Sounds
ideal, to be honest, yeah. We'll put a link to that story in our podcast show notes. Let's bring you more now, though, on the newest round of American tariffs. Donald Trump's new 10% global levy came into force early this morning after Friday's Supreme Court decision. Our chief Asia correspondent, Rosalind Matheson, is with us for more. Ros, what has changed then for US trading partners with this new tariff?
Well, the landscape is changing pretty quickly because some countries had arrangements that maybe now are less favourable for them. Some actually find themselves in a better position potentially with this 10%. But a big question mark, obviously, because the administration is saying, officials are telling us they are looking at a way to get that to the 15% very quickly that Donald Trump did threaten. So that could move and change again itself quite quickly. But beyond that, there's sort of a lot of uncertainty for trading partners about the status of their trade deals and how does this affect the terms that they may already have agreed to. And that's why you're seeing some places tap the brakes a bit, including India and obviously the European Union freezing the ratification process of the trade deal through the European Parliament, which is to pause and say, hang on, we need to actually take stock and make sure in all of this fine print that we're not going to be worse off on specific products, for example, or sectors, for example, and also anticipating that the administration, the US, is now going to launch all these investigations, broader investigations under the parameters of national security or anti-discrimination, and that's a whole lot of different sectors. That includes batteries, for example, metals, other things. And so the question is, how does that affect, potentially the existing arrangements that you've got? And so for a lot of companies and countries, the trick is to look through the 150 days of this 10% or 15% and anticipate what might come after that and how that affects your existing trade arrangements or your trade deal and whether that needs to be reconsidered.
Yeah, well, the European Union is warning that the new tariffs break their trade deal with the US, and the EU, obviously a US ally, may be seeing higher tariffs, has them pausing for thought. How significant is this European Union warning?
Well, it is significant, and it'd be interesting to see how Donald Trump does react to that, as some of his warnings that he's been issuing about, punishing certain countries. Is that a shot across the bow at the EU to get this done? Because, of course, they froze the ratification process previously, just briefly, over the dispute over Greenland. Now they've frozen it again, and our own reporting, as you were saying, shows that initial investigations show that it actually can break the terms of the trade deal. Higher levies on some products like cheese, butter, plastics, textiles, for example. So they're quite rightly probably saying we need to pause here. It was interesting because our own reporting shows there was this meeting, obviously, of lawmakers and ambassadors, and many trade ambassadors in the EU said they did want to keep the deal. They want to work out how to keep the deal. They just don't know at this stage how they can or how quickly they can. And so that, again, is sort of the point the EU finds itself at. But it does risk putting itself back into the crosshairs very much with Donald Trump as a result.
Okay, Ros, thanks very much for joining us. Our Chief Asia correspondent, Rosalind Matheson there. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this.
Now, Meta and EssilorLuxottica have taken the lead in smart glasses with more than 7 million frames sold last year. But now the partners are navigating tensions over pricing and other strategic differences as rivals prepare to challenge their position. Our Italy Bureau Chief, Chiara Albanese, joins us now for more on this. Good morning, Chiara. This has been a 6-year collaboration, hasn't it, between Meta and EssilorLuxottica so far. What success have they had with it?
It's been a very interesting collaboration, not only because it's been 6 years, but because they have been really the two companies at the forefront of this revolution that is the one of AA glasses. Now they are coming under the strain of more competition coming into the market. The successes has been like to really launch and bring to US mass consumers that idea. And they sold millions of glasses and they expect to do so in this year as well.
But our reporting out this morning looks at some of the challenges now in this partnership. What's gone wrong?
At the moment, like the main challenge is to find a balance between two companies that have very different roots. One is a domestic Italian company that was created by a single entrepreneur as a small factory and then has become global. And the other one is Meta, the tech giant. So they have different priorities in terms of pricing and volumes, and they're working together to find a compromise.
So what does the future then look like for the smart glasses market? Can Meta and EssilorLuxottica sort of stay as the key players, as you say, selling kind of millions of units?
That's a 1 billion question. That is going to depend a lot on the competition and what other companies are also going to come to the fore. But I think they're going to find a solution and strike a balance and mostly focus on the US market where we should expect most growth coming up.
With more, I suppose, competition in this market, though, as well, what about questions about things like pricing? How is exactly that going to play out in this partnership?
The lion's share in this partnership is definitely Meta for their size and also because they have a stake in Essilor. So at the end of the day, I would expect they to have a stronger say in terms of where things are going to go and shape up. We're going to see, and a lot will depend also on what other companies and what other products are going to come to the market challenging those prices. Clearly, if they're going to set a price, but their main competitor is going to set it for half, they're going to have to rethink their strategy.
Yeah, okay, so that's going to be an interesting point, isn't it? A hugely competitive field for wearable technology, where it goes next. Our Italy Bureau Chief, Chiara Albanese, thank you so much for joining us. Look, I think this is such a fascinating conversation. What is the use case for these, high-spec glasses, for these high-tech glasses? Not sure that it's been fully made. The businesses say that this could replace your smartphone. You can give it voice commands, you can take photographs, you can take video. I wonder, Stephen, is it antiquated to ask about what this means about privacy? Clearly, the glasses aren't going to be banned or prevented on those grounds, but there's a whole debate about facial recognition, recording, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder too, this feels a bit like when smart devices first emerged as well, and people were getting their smartwatches, and you kind of thought, like, you don't really need a smartwatch, you've already got a phone, why? And then we've seen over time, but it's been a fairly slow burn for a lot of those devices as well. I mean, if you look at the numbers involved, so IDC experts in this area say that smart glasses are expected to reach around 30 million units by 2029. By comparison, you've got about 1 billion smartphones a year shipped, so it might be quite a slow burn in terms of the build-up of these things as well. But whereas I might sort of think, well, no, I'd never really want that, I do wonder, I still don't own a smartwatch, but I do really feel like the questions around the utility of these things can be developed over time. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.